I gave my late father's watch to his best friend instead of my brother. My dad passed 11 months ago. Pancreatic cancer, which moves fast, so we had about 6 weeks from the diagnosis to say everything we needed to say. My brother Derek and I both flew home. We took turns sitting with him at the hospital, trading shifts so my mom wouldn't have to be alone at night. My dad had this watch, a 1974 Omega Seamaster that his own father gave him when he graduated college. He wore it every single day of his life except when he showered. I have photographs of him wearing it at his wedding, at my graduations, at Derek's. I have this one photo of him holding me as a newborn and it's right there on his wrist. That watch is maybe the most him thing I can think of. The other person in this story is a man named Gary. Gary and my dad were best friends for over 40 years. They met in the army, which I didn't even fully understand the weight of. Gary drove 6 hours each way to sit with my dad at the hospital. He came 3 separate times. He and my dad would just talk for hours about things I wasn't part of, old stories, people I didn't know, jokes that went back decades. It didn't make me feel left out. It just made me realize there was a version of my father that existed before he was my father, and Gary was the person who knew that version best. During my dad's last week, he asked me to come sit with him alone. He told me he wanted Gary to have the watch. He said Gary had admired it since the day he first saw it, back in like 1982, and that every time my dad put it on, it made him think of Gary and of his own dad at the same time, and that he wanted Gary to carry both of those things forward. He said Derek would get the house tools, his record collection, his fishing gear. He said Derek would understand. I said okay. I meant it. My dad died on a Tuesday morning at 6 a.m., just before sunrise. My mom was holding his hand. Gary was in the waiting room. A few weeks after the funeral, I gave Gary the watch. He cried. He actually couldn't speak for a while. He kept turning it over in his hands, and then he said something like, "Your dad was the best man I ever knew," and I believed him completely. Derek found out maybe 2 months later. I'm not sure how. He called me and he was calm at first, that kind of calm that's actually the opposite of calm. He asked if it was true. He asked why nobody told him. I said Dad asked me to handle it. He said that watch was supposed to stay in the family. I told him Dad made the decision. I said I was just doing what he asked. Derek said, "You should have told me. I would have talked him out of it." And I think that's the part I keep coming back to. He said it so plainly. Like that would have been the right outcome. Like our dad in his last week of life hadn't thought it through and just needed someone to correct him. I told Derek that, not harshly. I said he knew what he wanted. He had 6 weeks to think about it, and that's what he chose. Derek said I went behind his back, that I excluded him from a family decision, that I took something that belonged to all of us and handed it to someone outside the family without even consulting him. I said it belonged to Dad. He told me what to do with it and I did it. He hung up. He called my mom a few days later and she apparently told him the same thing, that it was your father's wish. End of conversation. She'd known about it. He didn't know she knew, and that made it worse somehow. He felt like everyone had been keeping secrets from him. What I keep thinking about is that moment in the hospital room when my dad asked me to handle this. He was so clear. He wasn't confused or medicated into some other version of himself. He was tired and thin and entirely himself, and he told me what mattered to him, and I said I would do it, and I did. Gary wears the watch every day.